Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Into the Storm. Thank you to VIP Mortgage and Bison Ventures for sponsoring our podcast and for hosting us in this beautiful office here. Thanks to Trey, my nephew over here, and who does the podcast engineering, and then my sister, Trisha Madrid, who does the podcast producing, along with many other things here at Bison Ventures, along with business development, and she's our marketing director. So today I have another special guest, and it happens to be another friend.
Weird.
But we try to keep the guests to people that have good stories, though, and we just happen to have a lot of friends that have cool stories. So it's not just about what you do for a living; it's kind of how you got there, and what you do to help people. So luckily, I have a handsome friend here that's a financial advisor.
Check.
That also has a cool story and how you got to where you're at. And I think that what we talked about earlier, it's you can't always judge a book by its cover, and we probably deal with that a lot in our lives.
Oh yeah.
But I think people think that you may have grown up in, Kennebunkport.
Perception, not reality. No question about
Nantucket, maybe. And,
East Coast.
And everything it was easy for you, and you're like a
lot
boarding school kid, tons of Brooks Brothers, and but that's not the case.
No.
Not the case at all.
Quite the opposite.
So you're from El Paso.
Correct.
That's the first one.
Right there, yeah.
West Texas.
Done.
Yeah.
That's the podcast, guys.
Border town,
West Texas. And you did not have that super easy life growing up. And
No, it's very interesting. Obviously, perception isn't always what it's true. And for me, I get put in a box pretty quick. And once people hear my story, they change their opinion pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how I got to where I am today, and a lot of it is the why behind it. So I'll kind of take you back, 1980, El Paso, Texas, born and raised all 18 years, and older brother was already out of the house at about, I was 6 or 7 at the time.
Yeah, he's much older than you, right?
Yeah, he's 11 years older than I am.
Also doesn't look like he grew up in El Paso.
No.
He's an attorney too, by the way, successful.
Attorney in Southern California.
Also, handsome man.
So we had great grandparents. I'll start with that. Our grandparents were spectacular, hardworking. Dad's side was really blue collar, but very successful in his own right. Machine shop owner of 3 generations. Mom's side, really successful, white collar, more of an architect, did half of the town. Mm-hmm. So if you paint that picture, we're looking like we're going to have a great upbringing.
Yeah.
Not the case. What I realized very quickly is my parents' generation, to say it in so many words, they weren't quite up to speed, basically fuck-ups.
Yeah.
And it sounds sad to say that, but it's true, right? So my brother saw it and got the hell out of Dodge, and then I was kind of left holding the bag, being a younger brother. And just dealing with things that you wouldn't expect to deal with if your grandparents are decently okay.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening was my parents just ill-prepared and pretty selfish along the way. So growing up, challenging times, parents were divorced, and I would, my business partner is one of my best friends, knows this very well, but when I see a Crock-pot to this day, I still get the shivers.
You lived and died by the Crock-pot.
I don't know if you want to hear that backstory, but
I do want to hear that backstory.
I do.
I've heard the backstory, so
I would like to hear
it's a good story.
So I would call it, I'd be 4th, 5th grade, and I'd get a Crock-pot left for me with a note saying, "I'll be back soon," and I'd see my mom 2 days later. So I do not like Crock-pots. My wife knows I don't like Crock-pots.
And your mom, was she just out just partying?
Oh, yeah.
Just
out partying, having a good
time.
time. And then she'd come home and then, try to figure stuff out. And so the level of respect got lost pretty quick, to say the least.
Did you live with her solely, or did you go back and forth with her between your dad and your mom?
Good question. I lived with her basically Monday through Friday, and then I'd be every other weekend with my dad. Dad's a whole nother ball of wax. Remarried, a terrible woman with terrible children. So I would be sitting there waiting on a Friday, waiting for my dad to show up in his truck, and it'd be a 3 o'clock show up, and all of a sudden it's 8:30 at night and there's no dad still. So it was kind of a lose-lose situation. So luckily, thank God, I still had my grandparents who kind of showed me how to be successful a little bit, showed me the value of hard work, and then I had my brother along the way that really painted that picture of kind of how to get out.
Did your grandparents, were they the ones that like took you to like your practices and like games and stuff, or did your mom do that stuff?
So I usually got to practices and games by friends.
Yeah.
I'll jump around really quick on that note. I drove myself to college orientation at ASU from El Paso, got a place to stay,
Really?
and then drove to my brother's after that in California. So,
oh wow,
yeah.
So you did it all. Like you got yourself into school. Like they didn't know where you were going, or like
they didn't know if I was going.
Yeah.
My grandparents, thank goodness, helped me with tuition, so that was a huge help. Got me, over that hump. Allowed me to, be in a fraternity, really enjoy college. But yeah, my parents didn't even know I was going to college, much less where I was going to college.
So what kind of kid were you then in El Paso? Because it sounds like you had like potential to be a ruffian.
I actually wasn't. If you've ever been to El Paso, it's a challenge in and of itself if you're white. Much less thinking that people think you have some sort of money.
Right,
So it's not a win-win scenario when that happens in that town. So for me, I just was kind of reserved. I knew what I had to do to get out and to be successful and to just, basically write my own ticket. And that's all I was, is just kept my head down, kept grinding, kept going, and kept working at it.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what made you decide to go to ASU then?
It was, so in terms of affordability, I got into, a bunch of the big ones, SC, UCLA, UT, all the above. For me, it was more about, hey, my brother went there. He's already painted this road that I can kind of follow.
Yeah.
And it's not a USC tuition living in South Central LA.
Right.
So that was the final call there.
So when you drove into town and you got your orientation, then you went to California.
Yep.
And you just went there to stay with him for the summer, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to go back and I'm going to live in the dorms, and I'm going to join a fraternity, and I'm going to go figure out what I want to do.
Exactly right. And I didn't know I was going to be a financial planner at that point. But what I did know is I wanted to, obviously not having kids yet, I knew that I needed to be self-sufficient because I can't rely on anybody. There's no plan B. So went through college. I knew I wanted to go into finance. So early on, chose finance degree, tried to make some connections, ended up getting an internship summer before my senior year with a guy out in Southern California who was also a Sigma Chi, Sigma Chi. And he really kind of showed me the ropes, showed me that you can be successful, you can help people, you can, basically write your own ticket, just depending on how hard you wanted to work.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's it. That's exactly
Did
what
you
I
work
wanted to do.
all through college?
Or
did you take those student loans?
I took some student loans.
And your grandparents helped out?
Grandparents helped out. I worked in the summers. And then I think junior and senior year worked in a bar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which bar?
Madison's.
Madison's in Old Town?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Great stories.
Great. That's a barrio queen now, I believe. She hates this part. This is when we start talking about.
Yeah.
Hey, remember that one time?
Dan Marley would come in the ton.
Dude, I met Steve Nash there right after he got drafted.
Yeah.
Literally like the day. He was wearing too big of a coat, and we're like, what are you doing here? He had just like done really well in the NCAA tournament.
Canadian.
Yeah, and just like standing there by himself, and it just, and somebody else. So when you decided that you're going to go into finance, it was mainly because of the fact that you knew that your mom wasn't prepared for you as a kid.
I wasn't there yet.
Okay.
I went into finance thinking it was cool and I could make a lot of money.
Okay.
Which like any college kid would.
Yeah.
Once I saw that internship before my senior year and seeing the impact that this guy could have on his clients, that's when I really started to connect the dots. So it was interesting. I started with a larger firm right out of college, met my business partner who I have today, really right out of the gates. And he probably quit 8 times in the first 2 years, whereas I didn't, because I knew I had no plan B. It's just what it was. But I started connecting the dots on the why piece of it probably 6 months into my career, understanding that I can literally sit down with people, tell them what they need to know, and they'll hug me afterwards, and I get paid well throughout the process. And then it really was until I started a family, met my wife, had kids, that I realized, man, this is exactly what I was supposed to do, because for me, I would never want to be that burden on my kids and having them to go through what I had to go through.
Do you remember the first time that you told the story to a client and like how it resonating, or do you remember when that whole thing went down? I know you just said like after you got married and stuff, but you had to have told that story of like your childhood. Do you ever?
I do. I don't always.
Okay.
It's really interesting you bring that up. I connect with my clients and they know that I'm vested in their well-being. I think they can tell that, but I don't come out and outwardly just share my story.
Yeah.
To me, it's if I'm getting really close with a client, I will, but it's not a sales pitch for me. Exactly is what I'm trying to say.
So your partnership is with David Filer.
Correct.
Westmark Wealth is their company.
And we've got a third partner, Jeremy Sanchez. He's like flies under the radar a little bit more than you two because he doesn't. I guess he's not around as much. But
as
he's
you
a
guys
great
are.
fit. He's an ex-Intel engineer. He was with us at our previous firm. So
great guy.
He has the processes for what David and I don't want to do.
Yeah,
it works well.
So this is another misconception I think that I actually just found this out a couple years ago. I kind of put David as like the back end guy and Alex like the BD guy.
Yep.
But really, Alex is the back end guy. He's the brain guy. Now that David's not smart, but you're more of the finance guy. You're more of like the numbers guy, and David's more of the, as we know, he is the BD guy, but he's also he's very funny. He's
hilarious.
Yeah.
It's one of the funniest guys I know. And the worst is you try to tell his jokes and they just don't land the same. Awful.
Yeah.
Wow.
So let's talk about the name Westmark Wealth and where you guys came up with that, because it sounds like a name that's been around forever, like I told them earlier. But it's one of those names that just you guys created
out of necessity. So we broke off from our previous firm 9 years ago.
Yeah.
Best move we ever made. So we're going through. We were working off of the coffee plantation on Shea and Tatum because, funny enough, our previous boss figured out that we were leaving before we were ready to tell him. So he wasn't very happy. It was pretty obvious how much money we made him. But anyway, so we're sitting there, we're going through names, and we come up with Watermark because it's got this security piece of it, and it just makes sense and it just fits. But there's a Watermark, another financial planning firm by the name of Watermark, but we changed it slightly. And we got some information from an attorney that probably wasn't the smartest attorney that we could just roll with it. Well, we talked to another attorney, call it 3 weeks, 4 weeks after that, and this guy's like, not even a chance in hell. You're in business 3 or 4 weeks, switch your name, switch it all up. But funny enough, we had already created a logo that we loved, and we were, that part where like you fall in love with something and you can't get rid of it. So we love the logo. It's a WM, and we're like, let's just start Googling stuff and figuring out what fits. And if you Google the name, nothing else comes up.
Right.
So Westmark was born.
Okay. That's true branding right there.
It's a shockingly similar story to Andrew Fall, right? With Bane Tree.
Well, I just know that was like the street he lived on.
Right, but he wanted to name it Bane Tree, and there was already another Bane Tree, so he had to change the spelling in order to avoid copyright issues.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I'm not promoting another financial advisor,
that's fine.
But that's fine.
He's a good guy.
He's also our friend, though.
It's like episode 13.
Yeah, exactly.
We're better, but it's fine.
So what your guys' focus, I think that people think that your focus is just doctors and dentists. Okay?
That's right.
But it's not.
No.
Just doctors and dentists. But that's kind of how you guys promoted yourself at the beginning, right?
So we built a brand in the physician and dentist market for years and years and years, and we just thought it was really good, and we knew that 1 + 1 = 3 every single time.
Yeah.
And what I've realized somewhat recently is that it's a lot more fun to work with business owners and people that make decisions rationally instead of physicians who maybe don't make decisions rationally. So for us, it's been a shift of adjusting. Really what drove me into getting out of the physician market and looking at other avenues is my physician business owner clients are the absolute most fun. Not only they're guys that we can connect with on a different level, but there's so much more opportunity that we have to work with them instead of a W-2 employee at Banner.
Right. So you guys would go after like physicians, or almost like interns, right? Or not even interns. What's it called?
Residents.
Residents. Sorry.
Yeah.
And so you kind of grow with them as they go, right? But
exactly.
For people that don't know, they're taught to do medicine.
Yes.
Not business.
No.
Which isn't their fault, right?
Correct.
And it's a lot of people. That's one of the things I think that's downfall probably in a lot of education is that you don't learn the basics in life and how to run things. But doctors, it's the worst, right? Mm-hmm. So they get out of medical school, they work their asses off for years, and they go try to start their first practice, and they find out, oh, now actually I'm a businessman, businesswoman, business person.
It's terrible,
but not a doctor anymore because now I've got to worry about payroll and CRM systems and computers and phones and rent, insurance,
and making decisions on the fly instead of researching a decision for 6 months.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest catch there is that analysis by paralysis. That's their
personality.
They're their own. Yeah, they're their own worst enemies at that point.
So But now you've guys created relationships with enough of them where they've created like established businesses, and that's more of what they do.
Correct. So we've got a subset of clients that are business owners, and they are doing it successfully, and a lot of times with our help, obviously connecting them with the right people and that trust piece of it. But for us, it's continuing that business owner direction and continuing that and bringing in some younger guys to continue that machine that we've built, right? So you built this machine over the last 18 years. It's one that you don't want to give up. Yeah. So it's ideally bringing some younger guys in to help fulfill that.
So are you guys at the point in your career where you're focusing just on like the big accounts and going after the bigger whales, and you guys are trying to have the younger guys or newer guys trying to just take over or build smaller accounts?
Exactly right. So helping these guys where maybe they're not great networkers, but they're good, ethical, smart financial planners. So really just plugging them into a market, letting them grow with clients just the way that we grew with clients. It's not a bad way to do it. The difference in our world versus you guys or a real estate agent, it's not transactional.
Right.
It's all recurring or mostly recurring. So that's a big piece of our business is that recurring that allows us to go after those larger clients or help out other people that we think that there's going to be a big upside with.
Right. So what's the most difficult part of your job?
Difficult. I would say working your ass off for somebody and you have put everything into it and you literally have added so much value, and then they decide that they're just going to either stick with their guy or go do it on their own. That's a let the wind out of the sails.
We can relate to that. So can all realtors.
Yeah, exactly. That's frustrating.
Yeah.
So you have problems like Robinhood and Ameritrade, and people want to be like their own traders, but that's not we're building wealth, right? That's
stock picking.
That's stock picking, right?
Yeah.
So building wealth is, your life insurance and, any retirement plans and generational stuff, right?
It's generational stuff, but it's looking at everything in a big picture and being smart about it. So if you look at this 1,000-piece puzzle, you've got to put it all together. And there's no way that a successful person is going to be able to put it all together because there's a reason why they got to where they are. They're successful in what they do.
Right.
So for me, it's having that client understand that we're going to be essentially the coach of that team. They can be the GM or the owner of it, and they're going to give us the trust that we're going to be able to put the right team on the field to put that jigsaw puzzle together.
So let's take Trisha here. She's 52.
Okay.
51. 52.
51.
Isn't that funny?
That's easy.
I love doing that.
You're only a couple years younger than me.
I'm 48. So take her. She's 51 years old. What is it that, like, what's like mandatory for somebody like her to have in her life right now? I'm going to go to Trey next, by the way.
Good. So, and no offense if you're just starting to think about this, we got a lot of work to do. So really it's all about, and I'm going to switch gears a little bit and I'll come back to your question. So it's not about what you make, it's what you save.
Yeah.
And it's little by little. So I'll give you a prime example. I've got sort of a client, business owner, spine surgeon in town that I was referred to by a couple of other guys that are great referral sources of ours. And we thought this guy was going to be a home run. He was selling a part of a surgery center, and we started diving into it. His personal American Express bill is $46,000 a month. So he's been making $1.5 million to $2.5 million for the last 20 years. So it means nothing to him because it's all about what you save, not what you spend. So going back to answering the question, 51. So you didn't catch that.
All right, 48. Just do me. It's fine.
So really, it's at this stage of the game, you've got to start making really big headway and doing it on a monthly basis. So first and foremost, 401k, no question. And then we start going down the road. So we can start looking at backdoor Roth IRA options, brokerage account options, non-qualified plans. It's all about getting those tax-deferred, tax savings vehicles on track, and then we start looking at the taxable ones. The get rich quick, you're going to hit this home run, it's just not going to happen, and it's never going to happen. So what we really try to do with some kid gloves is maybe adjust the goals a little bit, because it's shocking when you start running these financial plans. If somebody adjusts their retirement goal by 1 year or 2 years, it makes a huge difference in their overall plan. So really starting to look at the goals and what you're trying to accomplish.
One of the things that I've seen that you've shown before is there was, I think, blew everybody away and actually made everybody very nervous, is people don't equate inflation into they're like, oh, I want $3 million by the time I retire, and I'm going to retire in 25 years. Well, that means you need $7 million because of inflation, things are going to be that much more expensive.
Exactly.
Those aren't correct numbers probably, but it's enough where you're just like, holy cow, I have some work to do.
Great point. Up to this year, nobody cared about inflation. We haven't had inflation for the past 8 years.
Yeah.
Guess what? It's here.
Yeah.
And it's going to average. So it's always going to come back to that average. So you absolutely have to think about that. But I wouldn't be so worried on that big number. What I would be worried about is the monthly, get started, start somewhere, and then continue to add on to that. So
the universal life insurance plans.
Yep.
Those are great.
Okay.
Right? You don't think so?
I do. They're very controversial.
Okay. So
essentially what happens is insurance agents get paid too much on them, and they push them, and they're structured the wrong way. IRS just changed some tax law in 2018 or 2020 to make things a little bit more advantageous in that world. And if they're structured the right way, they can be done well.
So talk to me about what they are then.
So you throw cash inside a life insurance, it's going to grow tax deferred. You get tax-free access to it.
Mm-hmm. Then it has a back end rider, so to speak, of like a life insurance policy.
Sure. And what happens is agents talk all about their positives and none about the negatives. They're super expensive. So it really takes the smart guy to, one, start off with a much smaller death benefit, and two, shrink that death benefit when you stop putting money into it. Those two things are key to make them work.
Okay.
And if you don't do it, it's going to blow up.
Oh. Well, that's why you're taking mine over, so that helps. That helps to know. But I know that like a lot of employers are using that as like leverage for like sign-on bonuses, and companies are giving them as if it's like
deferred comp, golden handcuffs. There's a ton of names for them, and they're doing it because they're non-discretionary, meaning they're not under ERISA law, which then it makes it to where the employer can pick and choose who gets it instead of giving it to everybody in the company.
Right.
That's a big perk from an employer perspective.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we've done seems like a lot lately, we've talked about financial literacy with kids and stuff. And I think right now, everybody's got to be concerned somewhere, right? Where nobody's making the money they're making. Things are just a little more difficult. You're losing equity in your house. Yep. Everything's more expensive.
Yep.
So where does somebody like Trey, who's 24.
5.
25. I'm off. Are you 25?
All over the
I
place.
did this last time too.
He's had a birthday last month.
Oh, happy birthday.
Good month.
Yeah. So he's 25 years old, and obviously right now would be like the most amazing time for him to be starting a process of going. I was actually thinking about this last night before I let you go here.
Go ahead.
Because he's 25 and he's working here, we've got to figure out a way for him to really like have like legit paychecks, legit opportunity to pay his taxes so he can get a house, right? Okay. So he can buy a house.
Double-edged sword, but keep going.
It's a double-edged sword, right?
Paying taxes, you got to pay taxes to get the house.
It sucks. That's why servers don't have houses and bartenders don't have houses. But how does somebody like myself help him get like the money and get the opportunity? I guess what my thing is like I want to be able to get him a house, his sisters a house, and all my kids a house, by the time they're that age, right?
Okay.
So he'd be the first one to go. So obviously I can gift him money for a down payment, but I'm not going to gift a whole down payment for a home for him.
Sure.
Love you, but that's not going to happen. But I also want to be able to give him enough money where he can do that sort of thing. So obviously we know from the mortgage side he's got to qualify from, and he's got to pay taxes.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So I guess that's I'm answering this question for myself. So I personally, is there a way for me to do that from a tax benefit for me to be gifting money to somebody like that? This is a trick question.
Well, so if you gift him that money, then he's not going to show it on his return either. So,
right,
but if you have your own LLC, if you have your own business, you can put him on payroll. Mm-hmm. It's going to cost you 7.5% on payroll taxes, but then it's going to come out on his W-2, which is now what a mortgage company wants to see as a W-2. So you put him on payroll, but you've got to be able to have an LLC in order to do
I can't believe I just like took myself into a spot that I was meaning to go to, and I just did it on accident. But I couldn't remember, because what I want to do is I want to have all the kids on payroll.
Yep.
Because that benefits me as well, right? And it also benefits them. So how does that benefit me?
So if you've got kids that you can substantiate doing a job for you.
Yep.
So I've got a client that's an orthodontist, and he's got a 6-year-old on payroll because they've got jacked up teeth, and he's putting braces on them. Mm-hmm. So it depends on your CPA. That's going to be the final say. But usually 8 and above, you can figure out some jobs for your kids. If you're a business owner, you can get your kids on payroll. What you're going to do is you're basically going to shift your taxable income rate down to theirs, which is nothing. Mm-hmm. So you're going to save some taxes. And then at that point, it still has to go into a bank account for them, but then you're still in control of that. And then you can go ahead and put it in some other types of retirement accounts. So in terms of hierarchy, I would definitely start with a Roth IRA. That's the number one thing that you would start to get going. Number one, you can't do it when you're a high income earner, but number two, all the gains are going to be tax-free. So think about a 10-year-old. Mm-hmm. So typically your money will double every 7 years. So 17, 34, 41, 49, 48, 57. You're 58, 57. You're going to have, let's start with $10,000. You're going to end up going to 20, 40, 80, 160, $320,000 just on that one $10,000 contribution on a Roth IRA by the time they're about 60.
So you start one for can I do that for even though they're not my own kids?
Yeah, but they have to show income.
Yeah.
So as long as they're showing income, it doesn't matter if they're your kids or not.
Okay.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay.
So,
because I think a lot of people do this. The successful people, mm-hmm. They find ways to pay taxes, but they want to find ways to also save money on taxes.
Minimize.
Right? Minimize taxes. There we go.
Yep.
So we have a lot to do.
So to go kind of the financial literacy thing, you know, like what to do with your kid or trade example, again, don't overthink it. I think people get overwhelmed because they're overthinking it and they get nervous, and the end of the day they don't do anything, and that's the worst thing that you can do. Start today. Start with $50 a month.
Yeah,
it'll turn into a lot. It'll be shocking how much it'll turn into. And people say, "Well, the market had a terrible day yesterday." Great, it's the best time to buy.
Right.
The more it goes down right now and you're young, the better it is for you because you're buying stuff and it's on sale.
Right. As much as it's hurting me right now, I also sit around and I think about the fact that I was like, well, this is going to be a good situation for my kids.
Yeah.
And for my nieces and nephews and stuff, right?
Exactly.
All our kids, to be honest with you.
Yep.
My kids are a little bit older than yours, obviously, so so they're able to legitimately have jobs for me because they're all adults, basically. So, Trish, you have a rapid fire for us here? We like to shift gears a little bit because sometimes we go too long.
What's your absolute number one biggest pet peeve?
Pet peeve, poppy knuckles.
As I just
nails
did it.
on
I literally
chalkboard.
just did that.
Thank God I couldn't hear it, but yes, nails on a chalkboard.
Oh my God. All right, that's
so you
funny.
never crack your knuckles?
No.
Wow.
And if something pops on me, I'm disgusted.
Right,
What
so if
about
you're
chiropractor or
golfing
something?
and you're twist and like
I mean, I rarely will, but it's
So you don't go to
grosses
chiropractor
me
at
out.
all?
No.
Now, do you know where that comes from? Like, what is that rooted in? Like some childhood
you
trauma?
could probably
or?
peel some layers and figure it out, but I can't tell you off the top of my head.
Okay, all right. What's your favorite word?
Favorite word? That's a great question. Fantastic.
I use that a lot too.
You do use that a lot.
Yeah, I do too.
Mine's neat.
Or neato.
Neato.
You know. Can I ask a non?
Yeah.
Okay. So, going back to where you started,
Okay.
what do you think was different about you and your brother, given the circumstances were basically the same for many people, in your neighborhood? What made you different?
Maybe I think I saw how my grandparents were and what they accomplished, and I could see that you can work towards something and be successful. It's not just this sort of no way out game.
Okay.
So I think that's where that came from. And I will tell you that what I struggle with a lot of times is what's going to give my kids that drive, because I know where I got my drive from. It's pretty obvious. Yeah. But what hardships are my kids going to have growing up in North Scottsdale going to private school? Like it's not there. So I try to do my best to introduce them to, we adopt a couple of families every year, and we literally go down they give us a list of what they hope for Christmas. We show up, and I think my oldest was 3 or 4 at the time, and this little kid called her Santa Claus, and that resonated with her. So hopefully things like that help, but I still struggle with what's going to give them drive.
Yeah, I think philanthropy is probably your best bet, right?
Hopefully.
Or seeing other people who
or just drop them off in South Phoenix and see if they can make it. So I don't know.
Fend for yourself.
Listen. I think we're all struggling with that a little bit as well.
Yeah.
With the kids, because they're all spoiled.
Yep. Can't help
Atlanta's really good at this. That's one thing. She's way better than I am about that. I mean, she is like a tyrant as far as forcing her kids to go to all the stuff. And I'm like, it's slow. And I'm like, you guys can go if you want. But she's like, you're going. And then, her kids are they're working their asses off. And then I feel bad.
There you go.
I get to see it all over social media.
We all do.
Yeah. Lanagram. But no, she's really, really good about that. And I will say, it's funny because my kids have not really struggled at all with anything, and hers have. It was way harder for them.
Yep.
Her doing, everything. I don't want to air too much laundry, so I won't go too far keeping it. But it's definitely a different way, and there's some things that that her kids are definitely more thankful for than mine are.
Yeah, it's perspective.
It is. But, I also feel like I had somebody else tell me this, because I had brought this up to somebody else before, and they're like, everybody kind of figures it out at one point in their life if they have a good foundation. And so your kids might not find out until they're 25 that things are hard.
Yeah.
But they're going to hit a point where they're going to be like, oh, crap, this sucks. And dad and mom are not here to pay my bills now. And now I've got to figure it out. So their hardship is their own.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
It's not what they see because of their parents necessarily.
This is like a parenting fundamental for like anything, not just financial. But, you should let your kids fail or expose them to hard things younger. Because the consequences are far less at 12 than they are at 38.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
I also heard somebody tell me one time, they're like, well, how many CEOs do you think grew up like you did? I'm like, oh, that's a good point. They might have actually had a leg up to get into Harvard, Stanford. And so there's kids that grew up in successful households and that are successful still. So
exactly. It's
100%.
It's not mandatory to fail.
No.
But it also goes back to like, people always go, my kid won't make it if he doesn't go to a private school either, by the way. Well, there's a lot of people that do just fine. You might do better nowadays. I think the public schools don't, provide public school doesn't provide maybe what a private school does. Sure. I used to be the other way around, thinking like this is ridiculous, but I do see a lot of really great people that have gone that route. And I know you're a big proponent of the private school thing.
Well, for us, it's having a religious background and a religious base. So I have 2 girls, so I think maybe a little differently than if I had 2 boys. But having that sort of background and that foundation to kind of lean on, hopefully will help. So we'll see.
Yeah, we don't know for sure though.
That's right.
Any more financial questions you have for us, or Trisha? Do you have any? Do you trade? Do you have anything that you want to learn about?
My anxiety is just skyrocketing over here.
As soon as I said Trisha, it's 50, and I started going, I should have not have done that because I know how you feel, because we just did this in Flagstaff. He presented it in Flagstaff, and it's a full room of pretty successful people, and
Pin
everybody was like,
pin drops.
Why is Alex speaking again? We're like, it just ruins the entire night. Everybody's so depressed afterwards. But at the end of the day, like you said, it's like there's a lot of ways to make money and to catch up and to be just fine.
Well, and honestly, if you don't sit down with somebody you don't know, right? You don't know what you don't know. And I think it comes back to face it now versus pushing it off a year or 2. And it's really sad when people take more time to plan their family trips annually than they plan their financial future. So
that's one to resonate. I've heard that before from you too, and that was.
Well, you repeat that. I'm actually going to type that out. I'm dead serious. I'm putting it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Okay, it's more people.
It's sad.
It's sad that more people take more time on an annual basis to plan their family trips than they do to plan their financial future.
Thank you. That's powerful.
A lot of the things that we've talked about with our group and where I've heard Alex talk about, and including Oleg too, right? So it gets into this whole generational wealth. Ed, same thing. Mm-hmm. He came on here and talked about it. Their side is all real estate focused mostly. Sure. Ed's like 100% there.
Yep.
Oleg's got.
Well, it's funny. I've sat down with both of them individually, and they aren't all in real estate. They're they've got their angles for sure. And it's funny because I literally spoke to Oleg this morning about, listen, I'm going to send you over a client of ours because they're interested in real estate. I think it's diversification is the key. Once you get to that level of, hey, we're checking boxes off, we're able to send the kids to college, we're able to retire on a decent basis, you can start diversifying out and start to hit those home runs and start to build that generational wealth if that's your goal. You can't build generational wealth if you're going to go through all your own money in retirement.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's where it's all about, is diversifying out and having those different asset classes to really propel yourself in not only different ways that they're treated where the markets are going up and going down, but the way they're treated from a tax perspective, which is huge.
Yeah. So do you think it's inappropriate to count on your kids to be the breadwinner for you later on in life, so you can take care of you?
That goes back to my why.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think we were lucky that our parents were frugal. I would say
they were very frugal.
Very frugal.
They did not use credit cards. I mean, it was.
And we were not wealthy by any means, but we were definitely like
we didn't want
upper
much.
middle class maybe, but we didn't want for much.
But you weren't hurting.
Not at all. But I also feel like we worked a lot as kids.
Yep.
Like we always had jobs, always doing stuff. I mean, our like
chores were
our housework alone was a full-time job.
Yeah, I love it.
But that led me to never want to have my kids have to do that.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I feel like I've same. I feel like I failed the kids with that.
I really should have had them. I should have had a house with a lawn.
Yeah,
and they should have done. They should have
every Sunday morning at 6 a.m. We should have them doing something, right?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to instill my kids about savings, and I will tell you, my kids work their asses off. So we spend a couple weeks in Laguna Beach every summer, and they've realized because where we are, there's basically one way in and one way out to the beach. Mm-hmm. So they'll go to Costco, buy boxes of waters, boxes of snacks, chips, and they'll sit out there and they'll make $200 a day just by people going up and down the beach. And it helps that they're cute, and my youngest one's still little.
How old are they?
8 and 11, and so the youngest one, she pushes the other one out there to really sell it. It's brilliant. It's brilliant marketing. But now we're getting into, well, girls, now you have cost of goods sold. I'll front you, but then you're gonna have to pay me interest on the back end. So
they don't understand that.
They do. It's all teaching moments, though.
Right.
So to me, I'm passionate about really trying to kind of change that generational issue of spending what you make or spending more than what you make. It comes down to little by little and save it along the way.
Yeah. I have a lot I could do a lot better with the kids. I just like giving them stuff.
Yeah.
And it sucks. And
you do spoil them.
I do spoil everybody, I think, that sits in my path, and if I have it.
Yeah.
But I may not always have it. So, and I didn't always have it, by the way, right? So, like, I'm in my third career of my life, and I was dead broke when I got into this business. So, it's funny. I just so everybody understands, I was broke 6 years ago, right? Trying to figure this whole business out. Like, I went and I had a lot of money before that at one point. So it is what it is, right? You got to figure it out and go for it. And, everybody's struggling to try to figure it out, but I'm definitely on a path of like where I want to be.
Yep. I think having no plan B is sometimes what you can give your kids, understanding that you're not always going to be there for them to rely on. Cause that's a lot of times, you just said it yourself, you didn't have a plan B. You made it, and you lost it, and you made it again because there was nobody else to back you up.
Yeah, and it sucks because our parents passed away very young too. So like when you're struggling, they're not around, right? You don't really have anybody but yourself, and there's this as well because
the absence of a safety net is tough, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, not just like emotionally, but the whole like stuff is tough financially, knowing that thank God I got mine.
Yeah. There's some moments though when sounds pretty morbid, but I tell my kids, it's like, hey, I'm probably gonna die pretty early.
Yeah, no,
pretty young.
I said it yesterday.
Historically,
yeah, the odds are not in our favor.
Dad, grandfather, uncle, all 57, mom 60.
Yeah, it's very freaky when I look at I'm 51, our dad died at 57.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's 6 years out.
That hits home.
Like it's brutal.
So it's but then they know they have a life insurance policy. Just kidding, everybody.
JK, wink.
Just kidding. So if you have any more questions, Trish, if you don't, we'll just wrap it up.
I think I know the answer to this one, but name one thing you've learned the hard way.
I've learned a lot the hard way. Honestly, what I've learned the hard way is you get more flies with honey than you do with vinegar, and I can attest that to my wife because she's taught me a lot.
That's brilliant. How long have you been married?
13 years.
Okay.
That was a rapid fire question, by the way.
That's a good, that
was a rapid fire answer too, by the way.
That's really good.
Thank you.
Jesus, you might want to put that at the beginning.
Yeah.
And just send that clip to your wife.
That's right. On repeat. Here, honey.
Kelly. They love each other too. That's one of those marriages where they actually really like each other.
Yeah,
it looks like that on social media.
Yeah, we do.
It's real.
It's not just social media.
Yeah, they genuinely seem to have fun together.
They're it's great. So, all right, buddy. Well, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
Yep,
it was a
last
minute ask.
It's the best.
But it wasn't last minute ask. It's just last minute confirmation.
Yeah.
Because we had been trying to do this for like the last month. I just, for some reason, put it in my calendar, and I didn't tell him that this was the day I picked.
Yeah.
So, Alex, I have you on our Trello board, which is like the tool we use to organize, from November of 2020.
Yep.
Yeah. So
like you've been on our like prospective guest list since then, literally.
And I value that and I appreciate that. I wasn't trying to dodge you, but Madrid's like, hey, should we try for September? You told me that in Flag, and I was like, yeah, sure.
I think we like talked about a couple of dates, and then I just never followed up on it, and then
it worked.
In my mind, I followed up.
We're here.
Yeah. So sorry.
Yeah, it all worked out.
Yeah.
Love it.
Thanks again to Alex Kienle for coming on from Westmark Wealth. Thank you to Trisha. Thank you, Trey. Thanks, VIP Mortgage. And thank you, Bison Ventures, Informed Mortgage Lending. Yes, we are a mortgage company. Also, we have some really great key accounts that we are looking for some LOs to fill. So if you're looking for a different opportunity right now to help grow your business, we would love to talk to you. So you can hit me up on bisonventures.com, or you can hit me up on any of the social media platforms. Again, thank you to everybody. Please like and subscribe and watch on YouTube.
Thanks for having me, Fred.
Yeah,
Appreciate
absolutely.
it. Thanks
all the podcast platforms. So thank you again. Take care. Bye.